I want to show you where we were before the U.S. introduced tariffs. You can see how much tariffs, both cash and non-monetary type tariffs, restrictions to do business in the country, we put on our other countries. Look how much they were putting on us. And why is that important? Well, there was a study done by Bank of America, and that they found out was to grow economically, you have to give a positive investment, return on your money. And what they did is they looked at Bank of America at the last 5 years of federal debt. And what they found out was for every dollar we borrowed and we spent, the only return we'd ever get was 58 cents. So for every dollar we were spending, we were losing 42 cents. To grow this country economically and have hot housing sales and economic growth and wealth creation, you really need to have creative things. What we've learned is every dollar we spend in the U.S. on manufacturing creates $2.64 of economic activity. And now you understand the great big push to build things in the United States of America. That's from the National Association of Manufacturers. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation said that for every dollar spent in the U.S. on U.S. auto manufacturing and parts generates $3.45 to $2.43 in economic activity. Folks, what I'm trying to tell y'all is the big push to bring construction back to the United States is to create wealth, homeowners, and what have you. Great news, and this just came out day before yesterday. U-Haul announced their number one cities top growth for U-Haul, other people using business. Houston, Texas was number 2 in the country. But notice there's 4 cities in Texas, that were in the top 10. That's astounding, folks. Well, you might surprise you, Brownsville, Harlingen. It shows you the importance of economic development. That's all SpaceX, something that didn't exist only 15, 20 years ago. Now, United Van Lines is a little different. They're older people, higher wealth, and very often corporate reloads. And where their top inbound states, percentage inbound shipments versus outbound shipments, there's not one great big heavy population state. We continue the trend across the nation to move to small town America. And it's popping up all the way through. I mean, look at Nevada, Arkansas, Alabama, Carolinas always win, Idaho. Top outbound states, and I spoke to a group literally this week in Miami from New York and New Jersey. In New York, New Jersey, California, North Dakota, the cold. Colorado might surprise y'all. And what we're learning is more and more people are not liking the drug culture of Colorado. They were one of the first major states to completely legalize many of the drugs and go from there. So why did people move in 2025? You as professional realtors need to understand why they're going there, because it may dictate to the type of home they're going to buy and where they want to live. 29% want to be closer to family. 26% because of jobs, 1 out of 4 if you think about that. 14% retirement. Top inbound states for retirement, there's no surprises here. Florida's number 1. I was surprised at Delaware and Wyoming and Maine. A lot of that is people are saying, I want to live there. Notice every one of those small town America if you think about that. Top inbound states by job move, Texas was 8th highest in the country. Washington, D.C., I think that may cease as more and more federal employees are retired and opting out for early retirement. But at least Texas made the list on that. And then if you want to look at United Van Lines, top towns, inbound MSAs, there's not one big town there. In fact, what you're looking at are a lot of college towns, a lot of destination places, a lot of economic growth places like Brownsville, Harlingen with SpaceX. Guys, a lot of destination. So I'm trying to tell you that we kind of get this dichotomy of big corporate towns like Houston, Texas, second best growth in the country for U-Haul. And then you get at other towns like Brownsville, Harlingen in that. So let's talk inflation. And I've got 2 pictures to describe inflation to you. This is what inflation, without inflation, this is what you get. And this is what you get with inflation. You just don't get as much because your dollar is worth less. You can spend less. So let me tell you the good news. The good news is we have 2.7% inflation right now. And yes, that is down from 9.1% literally back there in 2022 during President Biden's administration. Notice there is one missing point here, that white gap at the very end. That's when the government shut down and they didn't gather enough statistics to even calculate that. Now, the Fed is going to shoot for 2% inflation. We're not there yet. And it's one of the reasons the Fed thus far, at least the current Fed chairman, has not aggressively cut the Fed funds target rate and what they hope to get rates to. I expect in May, when we have a new Fed funds chairman, they may start doing that more aggressively, but we'll see. If it's a very strong economy, we probably won't. So let's talk borrowed money, because interest rates are on the top of everyone's minds coming up for housing sales and commercial real estate this year. I love this picture. Literally took this picture 40 years ago in San Angelo. It was going through a bankruptcy. You know, you can always go broke with borrowed money, but if you don't borrow money, you never can, if you think about that logic. So what's the forecast for interest rates? This is the latest from Fannie Mae and the MBA. And notice the average rate through 2027 for both these things for the full year is not out of the sixes. Now, Fannie Mae does see that we're going to get out of the sixes in the fourth quarter of this year, only down to 5.9%. The MBA doesn't see us get out of the sixes at all. So where do I think we're going to go? Well, you say, well, we need another rate cut. I do want to caution you about that. The two big red arrows on the bottom show you the last time the Feds, before this December, cut rates. And at both times when they cut the Fed funds rate, interest rates went up. Why? Because Wall Street didn't believe that inflation was going away. And it's going to take that belief before we get effective interest rate reductions. So now let me go my econometric model on y'all. Let me put my PhD in finance and statistics to work. I model everything. So in fact, my dissertation was on residential mortgage rates. And that's exactly what it was about. So I've been forecasting interest rates for 40 years now. So what I do is I say, okay, we know what the Fed funds target is. We know what the 10-year Treasury is. We have a futures market on the 10-year Treasury. We have the Fed telling us what the 10-year Fed funds rate will be. Can we forecast in advance what 30-year rates will be? So those of y'all that had statistics in college, put on your hat, think of regression again, analysis. And that first red arrow up the top says my model in explaining mortgage rates, 30-year conventional mortgage rates, explains 95.7% of all variability. In other words, every 20 times I bet this model, I win 19 and lose once. So it's a very good model. The second red arrow says, hey, how good is it? It's a phenomenal model. Look at all those zeros. They say it's good if it's less than 0.05. I got 14 zeros that's less than. And then lastly, a really good, robust model on the bottom right-hand corner will have all those less than 0.05. In other words, what I got is a phenomenal model, and it's very good at explaining interest rates. So what does that mean for us today? Well, this is the mortgage. This is the equation. 30-year rates, you put those other variables in there. But here's what you get. The actual red line is the actual 30-year mortgage rate. The gray bar, that's what my model forecast. It's pretty good, isn't it? So let's see where we're at as of this morning. At 4 o'clock this morning, no kidding, 4 o'clock, the 10-year Treasury rate today was 4.167%. The Fed has got their top end of their Fed funds target at 3.75%. That says that rates today, if you look on the left-hand side, 3.75, let's go to 4, should be 6.24%. We're at 6.15%. Rates are actually a little lower than they need to be right now. Do I see rates quickly getting out of the 6% range? My answer is no. And for those of y'all that are selling to buyers as we speak today and not just taking listings, what I would tell a prospective buyer today that's looking, quit waiting for rates to drop, go out and search and find that house, buy it, lock in a fixed long-term mortgage rate, and if rates go lower, you refinance. I think the quicker that people get off the fence and get into home ownership, the better off they're going to be. We're not going to see any improvement in affordability from even minor reductions in mortgage rates, because we're probably going to see some minor increases in home prices. So jobs are one of those gauges in the cockpit. That's where we gauge the economy. This is total U.S. jobs. I want you to look at this picture. That dip over there in 2009, 2010, that's a great recession. And then for the next 10 years, you can see we added about 20-some million jobs. And when that doggone COVID started, we lost, numerically speaking, almost every job we created the prior 10 years. Bam, they were gone. Great news is they're all back. We got them all back. That's great news. Really good news. But I want to show you Houston, the Houston, Pasadena, Woodlands, Metropolitan Statistical Area. That's all these counties that we count, whether it's from Galveston all the way down, all the way through the Woodlands and east and west. Notice that from the trough in the Great Recession to the bottom of the pandemic, we only lost half the jobs we created in the prior 10 years. So Houston's economy was more resilient It stood COVID better than the US, 50% better. And not only that, we have all those jobs back. In fact, Houston today is growing jobs at the same rate as the US today. And that's good news, folks. Great news. I do want to add this. We always hear politics. And by the way, if a Republican or Democrat tells you something, they'll probably not tell you something true. Is that fair enough? Both sides of the aisle on this one. You had a lot of criticism when President Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That is a political appointee. The president has every right to do it. But you would have fired them too. It made no difference. Under President Biden, when they were forecasting how many jobs we created in the 48 months President Biden was in office, they overestimated it 45 out of 48 months. Now, if you had someone that was only right 3 out of 48 months, would you retain them if they were investing for you or picking futures? And in fact, this past June, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said the U.S. added 147 jobs. They've now restated that down that we lost 13,000. So don't play the politics game. Let's just look at the raw numbers, which is where we need to be on these things. Now, let me tell you some good news for Texas, but not good news nationwide. This is the total number that are involved in real estate rental and leasing, brokerages, property management, whether it's residential or commercial, even agricultural, and leasing. You'll notice in 2020, at the very top, that yellow bar, that's actually where that bar this area is actually during a recession. The green, that's how many people were in the U.S. in real estate at that point in time. Today, we have 140,200 more people in real estate nationwide than we had then. And yet our housing sales are over 1 million less units and our commercial sales are half what they were. We have too many people in real estate in the U.S. Let me show you Houston. And what's amazing is we have about the same number of real estate that we had in 2019. And what's the key about 2019? That's the last normal year we had before the pandemic. And that's the key to focus on. We'll do that the rest of this trip today. U.S. home sales, and the black bar on the right, it's total number of home sales the prior 12 months. Just look where 2019 is. That's that red line. Guys, 2019, we were selling what? 5 million existing homes. Today, it's 3.8 million. We got 1,200,000 fewer homes a day. We're not anywhere near normal, the 2019 number. Now, the blue bars, you read it on the left, that's home prices. Home prices continue to go up a little bit slower. The problem with home prices right now is affordability is miserable, and we see no improvement over that for the next 24 months for the consumer. But let me show you Houston. And the key here, black line's the number of sales. 2019 is the key year, the last normal year we had. We're selling as many homes today in Houston, Texas, the entire MSA as we did in all of 2019. In other words, Houston, Texas is one of the very few markets in the country back to normal. And everyone's waiting for the housing market to recover. It just did. And that's why I'm telling you, if you got that prospective buyer out there looking for a home, show them this graph that we're all the way back. Now, home values in Houston are kind of sputtering like -1%, -2%, somewhere there. Those are little just adjustments. Do I think home values are going down? They have a little bit, and I'll show you that in greater detail. So where are we going to go from here? This happens to be Fannie Mae's forecast. They see it's about 6-7%, maybe 8% more existing home sales this year than last year, a little bit more next year. You throw in the NBA, kind of much the same thing. My forecast is, and I ran this for Renee Galvan, I think we're going to be up 3.8% this year. So you as a professional realtor will have 3.8% more transactions to pick from this year than last year. And that's actually pure commissions if you think about that. Yet even if we have flat home values, it's 4 or 5%, and that will beat inflation. That is good news. If you're in commercial, I guess this is where we pay the funeral dirge for you. You talk about tough life. This is the Ameriprise Financial Center in Minneapolis. It's a building that sold for $200 million in 2016. It was assessed last year for $90 million, and it sold for $6.25 million. Oh my goodness. Commercial real estate has just crashed. I am going to talk a little about apartments. As realtors, I've always believed this, that you need to be in commercial, you need to be in property management, you need to be leasing apartments and houses to people. And, by the way, HAR covers all that from Commercial Gateway, HR.com on the rentals and everything else, one of the best websites in the United States of America. But I want you to notice this, that our apartment values have not only troughed, they're growing. And that's unique in the country because the U.S. for the last 5 quarters has had static apartment values, and we're sitting here growing and growing, and that's good news. Now, one of our problems we have in Houston, Texas is we've built too much housing, but wait a second. We haven't built too much single family housing affordable. We built too many apartments, mainly Class A apartments with high amenities, granite and marble and hardwood floors and what have you. What I've done here, and y'all get all the copies of this PDF later from our great HER people, I went through, and for every year since 1991, I showed you the number of new single-family building permits for the MSA and the new multifamily building permits, which could be condos or apartments or co-ops or anything else in between. And then I looked at the number of new jobs. I always said that we need between 1.2 to 1.5 new jobs per net new dwelling unit. If you go through 2024, we only have 1 job per new dwelling unit. We've overbuilt. And it's one of the reasons that a lot of people are staying in apartments who would rather live in a single family. It's just so much more affordable. That's going to start changing because our values of those apartments are going up, which means our rents are going up because our cap rates haven't gone up at all. Apartment sales, well, remember 2019 was our last normal year, so to speak, another abysmal year. But I actually think we're going to see apartment sales shake loose this year because I think people see housing as an opportunity, particularly our old existing structures, because it costs so much to build new ones. My hat's off to builders in Houston, Texas, and I know that many of you sell new homes. Builders did a decision 3 years ago, and they said as home prices rose and as interest rates rose, they would cut their margins and buy down interest rates, and they put people in houses. Builders were very smart because they kept their entire teams of concrete crews, electricians, and plumbers together. They're not making as much money as they made, but they're selling a lot of houses. I still think, though, you can buy existing stock for less than you can buy new, and therefore there'll be some increased activity this year. And then finally, within Texas, I want to show you one other little twist. This is commercial apartment sales, and I want you to notice that price per unit has gone up in Houston, Texas, 3.9%. It's gone down 8.5% in Austin, where they way overbuilt. And then you throw in this one, cap rates. The higher the cap rate, the less you pay for the property. Shoot, if I'm out there buying apartments right now, I think I want to buy in Houston because I pay less for a higher cash flow. Trying to tell you, Houston's starting to look very, very attractive to our market. Oh, and then creativity. We're going to kind of talk about creativity. Guys, this is the old BP, Phillips Petroleum, Conoco Executive Tower in the energy corridor, which we don't need anymore. We learned we don't need offices. So what they did is they created corporate residences and apartments. And you're going to see more and more and more. This is called the Watt. And what a great name in the energy corridor to convert literally the headquarters of oil and gas companies into housing and call it the Watt, about energy. Kind of cool. And if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to go take a tour of it. You might be surprised. And then this was announced. We're going to get one city center at 1021 Main Street. They're going to convert it to a 553 unit residential project. Starts this February, should be done a year from now. Take a look at that one. Creativity. I want y'all to be creative and inventive like they have in aircraft. They've given us many more dials and gauges for our accuracy to get there. I love this one. We're looking for computer engineers who can solve difficult problems. What X is 24, Y is equal to 30. The firm number is that equation. Call us if you can. Now, you and I both know we're only going to get smart people calling that number. Am I correct? Remember I told you earlier this week I spoke in Miami. I spoke to a group of people from New York and New Jersey. And how do you relate to them? Buc-ee's. Talk about creativity. Not that they invented a convenience store. They didn't. Not that they invented a gas station. They didn't. They reinvented it. This is the largest convenience store in the United States of America. It's Lillian, Texas. It's 75,000 square feet. Just to explain to them how that, I said, imagine yourself, you're a beer vendor. A standard convenience store is the guy on the bottom right. A Buc-ee's is the guy with the stack. Think about what they've done. Oh, and remember, 70% of the profits from a convenience store come from the food and beverage sales, not from the gasoline sales. And with Buc-ee's, everything is privately labeled for profitability. If you haven't stopped in Lillian, just go stop and just take a gander. That whole shed out there is all gas pumps. Well, they do say they have gas pump number 260. They only count every other one. So 130 gas pumps is pretty amazing. Oh, and On the left, you can see where I gassed up there last Friday, $2.17, 17.9 cents. But look at the salaries Buc-ee's is paying. You would never imagine a convenience store would pay a food service manager 150 to 200,000 bucks, would you? Guys, I want you to walk in there with your HAR sharp glasses on and take a look at how you need to reinvent your service, how you're going to have more value-added service, how you're going to sell more units. Buc-ee's, well, shoot. Can we do Buc-ee's here? You bet. We're seeing teams of realtor professionals that are selling literally 300 homes. Oh, and get this one. Buc-ee's just opened at Texas A&M University, not with the gas station, because you don't need it on campus, but they will sell you all their favorite foods, all Buc-ee branded, at Texas A&M University. I'm just trying to tell you, we need to take lessons from them. We need to continue to innovate, guys. I'm a good beer drinking guy. If any of y'all are, we go have a cold one sometime. Now, I have a friend that sent me this. O'Reilly Auto Parts